Rain was falling hard on the metal roof of the old warehouse when Captain Jake first saw her. He'd stopped at Station Delta 9 to pick up supplies, nothing special, just another routine run through the outer colonies. The station was mostly empty, these days, too far from the main trade routes, too dangerous with all the pirates around. Jake pushed open the creaky door of the abandoned storage building, looking for spare parts he could trade. That's when he heard it, a soft whimpering, sound coming from the far corner. His hand moved to his sidearm, but what he saw made him freeze. A figure was huddled behind some old shipping containers, wrapped in torn fabric that might have once been a blanket. At first, Jake thought it was a sick colonist, maybe someone, left behind when the station was evacuated. But as his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he realized this wasn't human at all. Her skin had a strange, pale glow to it, like moonlight on water. Even dirty and obviously starving, there was something beautiful about her features. Delicate and almost too perfect. Her large eyes looked up at him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "Please," she whispered, in broken English, her voice barely audible. Don't hurt me." Jake lowered his weapon and took a step closer. The translator device clipped to her torn clothing was sparking and damaged, probably why her speech sounded so choppy. He could see she was trying to make herself smaller, expecting him to either attack or run away. "Hey, it's okay," Jake said softly, crouching down to her level. "I'm not going to hurt you. What happened to you?" The alien, for that's clearly what she was, pointed to a broken communicator nearby. Through gestures and broken words, she managed to tell him her name was Lyra. Her ship had been attacked by raiders about 3 months ago. Her crew, they'd abandoned her here when they realized she was the only survivor. Jake looked around the warehouse and his heart sank. He could see where she'd been trying to survive. Scraps of metal arranged into a makeshift shelter, empty food containers she'd probably found in the garbage, burn marks on the walls where she'd tried to make signal fires. This wasn't just abandonment. This was someone fighting to stay alive against impossible odds. "Why didn't your people come back for you?" Jake asked. Lyra's skin seemed to dim even more as she explained. In her culture, being the sole survivor was considered cursed. Bad luck. Her own species believed that keeping her around would only bring more disaster, so they'd left her here to die alone. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. He'd seen a lot of cruel things in his years hauling cargo through the frontier. But this was something else. To abandon someone just because they'd survived when others hadn't? It went against everything he believed in. "How long since you've eaten?" he asked. Lyra held up 3 fingers, then made a gesture he interpreted as days. 3 days without food. Jake could see how thin she'd become, how her strange, beautiful skin had lost its natural glow. She was dying, slowly but surely. According to every regulation in the book, Jake should have reported this to Colonial Command immediately. Unknown alien species required official contact protocols. There were procedures, forms to fill out, quarantine periods. But looking at this fragile being who'd been cast aside by her own people, Jake made a decision that would change both their lives. "Come on," he said, standing up and extending his hand. "You're coming with me." Lyra stared at his outstretched hand like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her skin began to shift color slightly, from pale silver to a warmer golden tone. It was the first sign of life Jake had seen from her. You won't leave me?" she asked, her voice filled with hope and disbelief. "No," Jake said firmly. "I won't leave you." When she took his hand, Jake was surprised by how cold her skin felt, but also by a strange tingling sensation, like a mild electric current. Her species was clearly very different from humans, but her gratitude was universal. Tears, or something like tears, began flowing down her cheeks. Jake helped her to her feet and guided her toward his ship, the Frontier Runner. She moved slowly, weakened by months of barely surviving, but she kept looking back at him as if afraid he might disappear. Every few steps, she would whisper thank you in her broken English. As they walked through the rain toward his cargo hauler, Jake realized he was probably making the biggest mistake of his career. Harboring an unregistered alien could cost him his license, his ship, maybe even his freedom. But when he looked at Lyra struggling to keep up beside him, her strange golden glow growing brighter with each step away from that terrible warehouse, he knew he couldn't have made any other choice. The frontier runner wasn't much to look at, an old cargo hauler that had seen better decades, but to Lyra it might as well have been a palace. She stood in the doorway of the main cabin, staring at the simple bunk, the small food processor, the heating unit that actually worked. "This is for me?" she asked. "It's not much, but it's warm and dry," Jake said. "And there's food." He watched as she sat carefully on the edge of the bunk, as if afraid it might disappear. Her skin was cycling through different colors now, silver, gold, even hints of blue and green. Jake didn't know what it meant, but it seemed like a good sign. As the ship lifted off from Station Delta 9, leaving the abandoned warehouse far behind, Jake looked over at his unexpected passenger. Lyra was pressed against the small viewport, watching the stars appear as they left the planet's atmosphere. For the first time since he'd found her, she almost looked peaceful. He had no idea where this decision would lead them, what dangers they might face, or how he was going to explain an alien passenger to anyone who asked. All Jake knew was that he'd found someone who needed help, and he'd given it. Sometimes, that's all that matters. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them, both toward an uncertain but hopeful future among the stars. 3 days into their journey, Jake discovered that Lyra had never seen coffee before. She watched him make his morning cup like he was performing some kind of magical ritual. "What is this dark liquid?" she asked, her skin shifting to a curious, pale blue color. "Coffee," Jake said, taking a sip. "Humans drink it to wake up." "It smells intense," Lyra said, leaning closer to the cup. "Does it hurt?" Jake couldn't help but smile. "Sometimes. Want to try a little?" He gave her just a tiny sip and watched as her eyes went wide and her skin flashed bright yellow. She made a face like she'd just tasted lightning. "Humans are very strange," she said, but she was smiling too. This had become their routine. Every day brought new discoveries as Lyra learned about human life aboard the ship. She was fascinated by everything. The music Jake played while working, the way he cooked food instead of just eating nutrition bars, even how he talked to himself when he thought she wasn't listening. "Why do you speak to the walls?" she asked one afternoon. Jake paused in his work on the navigation system. "What do you mean?" "When you fix things, you talk to them. You say, 'Come on, work with me, and don't give up on me now.' But walls cannot hear." Jake felt his face get warm. He hadn't realized she'd been watching him so closely. I guess it makes me feel less alone. Been flying solo for years. Sometimes you need to hear a voice even if it's your own." Lyra's skin turned a soft, golden color. "You were lonely too." "Yeah," Jake admitted. "I was." The alien girl had been trying to make herself useful from day one. At first, Jake worried she might accidentally break something important, but Lyra was incredibly careful and surprisingly good with technology. Her people seemed to have a natural understanding of energy patterns and systems. One morning, Jake woke up to find his ship running smoother than it had in months. Lyra was sitting by the main control panel, her hands glowing faintly as she touched different circuits. "What did you do?" Jake asked, not angry but amazed. "The energy flows were tangled," Lyra explained, struggling with the English words. "Like knots in rope. I helped them find better paths." Jake checked the readings and couldn't believe what he saw. His fuel efficiency was up 20%. The engine was running at optimal levels. Systems that had been acting up for weeks were now working perfectly. "This is incredible," he said. "How did you know how to do this?" Lyra's skin dimmed slightly. "My people, we feel energy like you feel wind. It is natural for us. But—" She hesitated. "But what? Is this enough?" she asked quietly. "Am I useful enough to stay?" The question hit Jake like a punch to the gut. He realized that every helpful thing Lyra did, every small improvement she made to his ship, came from a deep fear that he might abandon her too. "Lyra," he said gently, "you don't have to earn your place here. You're not my employee. You're my friend." Her skin cycled through several colors before settling on a warm gold. "Friend," she repeated, like she was trying out the word. But Jake could see the fear was still there, lurking beneath the surface. It showed up in little ways. How she always asked permission before eating. How she slept curled up in the corner of her bunk as if taking up less space. How she flinched whenever Jake moved too quickly. The worst moment came on their 5th night together. Jake had been working late on some cargo manifests when he heard a soft sound from Lyra's quarters. He found her sitting on her bunk, looking, lost and scared. "Bad dream?" he asked. She nodded, then looked up at him with those large, strange eyes. "Jake," she said quietly, "I know I am different, alien, but I can learn human ways. I can be whatever you need me to be." There was something in her voice that made Jake's stomach turn cold. "I don't need you to be anything except yourself," he said carefully. "But humans have needs," Lyra continued, her voice barely a whisper. "I can warm your bed, human. I can make you not lonely anymore. Just please don't leave me." The words hung in the air between them, and Jake felt sick, not because of anything she'd done, but because he finally understood how desperate she really was. In her mind, this was the only currency she had left. Herself. "No," Jake said firmly, but gently. "Lyra, no, that's not how friendship works." She looked confused, her skin shifting through confused grays and blues. "Among humans," Jake explained, sitting down across from her but keeping his distance, "friendship means caring about someone without wanting anything in return. It means respecting them. What you're offering, that should only happen when both people truly want it, not because one person is afraid." "I don't understand," Lyra said. "You're not something to be used," Jake said. "You're a person, a being with thoughts and feelings and rights. You don't owe me anything for helping you. I helped you because it was the right thing to do." Lyra stared at him for a long moment, her skin cycling through colors he'd never seen before. Finally, she whispered, "Your species is very strange, Jake." "Yeah," he said with a sad smile. "But in good ways, I hope." Over the next few days, something shifted between them. Lyra still helped with the ship, but now it seemed to come from genuine interest rather than desperate gratitude. She asked more questions about human culture, about Jake's past, about why he chose to live alone among the stars. "I had a family once," Jake told her one evening as they watched hyperspace flow past the viewport. "Lost them in a pirate raid on the colony where I grew up. Been running cargo routes ever since, trying to find some kind of purpose, I guess." "You found me," Lyra said softly. "Yeah," Jake said. "I did." Her skin glowed warm gold in the dim cabin light, and for the first time since he'd found her in that warehouse, Jake thought she might actually believe she was safe. Jake was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency broadcast came through. The transmission crackled with static, but the message was clear enough to make his blood run cold. "Attention all vessels. Colonial Command is offering a 50,000 credit reward for information leading to the capture of a stolen alien artifact. Subject is approximately 5 feet tall, pale skin with luminescent properties, last seen in the Delta sector. Jake nearly dropped his cup. In the doorway, Lyra stood frozen, her skin turning a sickly gray color. "They're calling me an artifact," she whispered. "You're not an artifact," Jake said quickly, switching off the comm system. "You're a person." But even as he said it, Jake felt the walls closing in around them. 50,000 credits was more money than most cargo haulers made in 5 years. Every ship in the sector would be looking for them now. The next few hours brought worse news. Jake's old contacts in the smuggling network started sending him worried messages. Word was spreading that Lyra's people, the Lyrians, were a restricted species. No contact allowed. Her presence in human space could start a diplomatic crisis. "I don't understand," Lyra said as Jake explained the situation. "My job was to talk to other species. That's why I was on that transport ship." "What kind of job?" Jake asked. Lyra's skin shifted to nervous blues and purples. "I was what you would call a messenger, carrying important information between worlds." Something in her voice made Jake look at her more carefully. "What kind of information?" Before Lyra could answer, the ship's proximity alarm started screaming. Jake rushed to the pilot's seat and checked the scanners. 3 ships were closing in fast, and they weren't Colonial Command vessels. "Pirates," Jake muttered, recognizing the ship signatures. "The same ones that attacked your transport." Lyra went very still. "They found me." "How? How could they track us?" Lyra touched her chest where her skin glowed brightest. "My people, we give off energy signatures, very faint. But if you know what to look for." She looked at Jake with terrified eyes. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I should have told you." Jake was already pushing the ship's engines to maximum. "Tell me now, why are these pirates so interested?" "In you?" "The information I carry," Lyra said, her voice shaking. "It's not just data. My people encode important messages into our biological systems, like living memory storage." "What kind of messages?" "Warning about an invasion fleet. 3 species working together to attack human and Lyrian colonies. The coordinates, ship numbers, battle plans. It's all stored in my mind." Jake stared at her in shock. "You're carrying military intelligence?" "I was supposed to deliver it to both human and Lyrian commanders. A joint defense operation. But when my ship was attacked..." Lyra's skin flickered with pain. "The pirates, they weren't random raiders. Someone hired them to stop this information from getting through." The ship shook as energy blasts hit their hull. Jake threw the frontier runner into a sharp turn, heading for a nearby asteroid field. It was dangerous, but it might give them a chance to hide. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Jake asked, weaving between floating rocks. "Because then you would know how dangerous I really am," Lyra said quietly. "Anyone who helps me becomes a target. I hoped maybe if we stayed quiet, stayed hidden." Another blast rocked the ship. Jake could see the pirates splitting up, trying to surround them. His old cargo hauler was tough, but it wasn't built for combat. "Jake," Lyra said, her voice barely audible over the engine noise, "you should let them have me." "What?" "Stop the ship. Tell them you found me by accident. They probably won't hurt you if you just hand me over." Jake looked at her in the co-pilot's seat, seeing the resigned expression on her face. Her skin had gone completely gray now, all the light drained out of it. "You want me to abandon you?" he said. "I want you to live," Lyra replied. "You saved me from that warehouse. You gave me kindness when my own people wouldn't. But this is bigger than both of us. If those invasion plans succeed, millions will die. And if I hand you over to pirates, you'll definitely die." Lyra was quiet for a moment. "Yes." Jake made his decision. He pushed the engines even harder, diving deeper into the asteroid field. "Not happening. Jake, please." "No," he said firmly. I don't abandon friends, ever. The pirates were having trouble following them now. The asteroids were too dense, too dangerous for their larger ships. But Jake knew they couldn't hide forever. His fuel was running low, and eventually they'd have to come out. There has to be another way, Jake muttered, checking the navigation charts. Think, Jake, think. The Colonial Command ships, Lyra said suddenly. The ones looking for me. If we contact them, they'll arrest us both. But they'll also protect the information. Jake, those invasion plans, if the right people get them, they can stop a war. Save lives. Jake realized she was right. The pirates wanted to destroy the information. Colonial Command might arrest them, but they'd also want to hear what Lyra had to say. It's still a huge risk, Jake said. They could decide you're too dangerous to let live. Then we make sure they understand how important this is, Lyra said. Her skin was starting to show hints of gold again. We make them see that I'm not just some alien artifact. I'm someone trying to save both our peoples. The ship shuddered as they scraped past a particularly large asteroid. In the distance, Jake could see Colonial Command ships approaching the asteroid field. The pirates were backing off now, not wanting to face military vessels. Last chance, Jake said to Lyra. We could still run, find some backwater planet and disappear. Lyra looked at him with those large, expressive eyes. Is that what you want? Jake thought about it. A quiet life somewhere safe. No more running, no more danger. But then he thought about the millions of people who might die if those invasion plans weren't delivered. No, he said finally. I want to do the right thing. Lyra's skin bloomed with warm golden light. Then let's talk to Colonial Command. Jake opened a communication channel and took a deep breath. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Colonial Command. This is Captain Jake Williams aboard the Frontier Runner. I have someone here who needs to speak with your commanding officer. It's about saving a lot of lives. As the military ships moved to intercept them, Jake looked over at Lyra. She was scared. He could see it in the nervous colors flickering across her skin. But she was also determined. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For believing I'm worth saving. Jake smiled. Always. The Colonial Command ship was huge compared to Jake's little cargo hauler. As they docked, Jake could see armed soldiers waiting for them. His hands were shaking slightly as he powered down the engines. Remember, Lyra said quietly, no matter what happens, the information I carry is more important than either of us. I know, Jake said, but his stomach was twisted in knots. The airlock opened and Commander Chen stepped aboard, flanked by 2 security officers. Jake recognized her immediately. They'd served together years ago, back when he was still in the Colonial Navy. Jake Williams, she said, her voice cold and professional. You're under arrest for harboring an undocumented alien and violating first contact protocols. Hello to you too, Commander, Jake said. Chen's eyes moved to Lyra, who stood quietly beside him. The alien's skin was cycling through nervous colors, but she held her head high. So this is the missing artifact, Chen said. She's not an artifact, Jake said firmly. Her name is Lyra, and she's got something you need to hear. I'll decide what I need to hear, Chen replied. Both of you, hands where I can see them. The security officers moved forward with restraints, but Lyra stepped forward. Commander, she said, her English much clearer now after weeks of practice. I carry military intelligence about a coming invasion. 3 alien species are planning to attack human colonies in 67 days. Chen paused. Prove it. Lyra closed. Her eyes and her skin began to glow brighter. Suddenly, holographic images appeared in the air around her. Star charts, ship designs, battle formations. Jake had never seen anything like it. This is the invasion fleet, Lyra said. The images, shifting and changing as she spoke. 47 ships. They plan to hit the outer colonies first, then move toward Earth. The Cathari provide the ships, the Vex provide the weapons, and the Drakmor provide the soldiers. Commander Chen stared at the holographic display, her professional mask slipping. How do you have this information? My people discovered the alliance by accident. We were supposed to deliver this to both human and Lyrian military commanders. A joint defense was the only way to stop them. Why should we trust you? Chen asked. For all we know, this could be some kind of trick. Jake stepped forward. Because she's already lost everything trying to get this information to you. Her own people abandoned her. Pirates have been hunting her for months. If this was a trick, don't you think she would have picked an easier way? Chen looked between Jake and Lyra, clearly struggling with the decision. Even if this is real, the Lyrians are a closed border species. Any cooperation with them could be seen as an act of war. More of an act of war than letting millions of people die? Jake asked. The holographic images flickered and went out as Lyra swayed on her feet. The display had taken a lot out of her. Jake moved to steady her, and Chen's security officers tensed. She's exhausted, Jake said. When's the last time you ate? He asked Lyra. 2 days, she whispered. 2 days! Jake looked at Chen accusingly. She's been running on empty, trying to deliver information that could save your colonies, and you want to arrest her? It's not that simple, Chen said, but Jake could see doubt in her eyes. Yes, it is, Jake said. Look at her, Commander. Really, look at her. Does this look like someone planning to invade human space? Chen studied Lyra more carefully. The alien was leaning against Jake for support, her skin pale and flickering weakly. She looked fragile, almost transparent. The information, Chen said finally. How do we know it's accurate? Lyra looked up, struggling to focus. The attack begins with a strike on Station Alpha 7, 17 days from now. They think it's just a supply depot, but you could set a trap? Chen's eyes widened. Station Alpha 7 was classified. Very few people knew its real importance as a military communications hub. How could you possibly know about Alpha 7? Chen demanded. Because that's where the first test of our joint defense system was supposed to happen, Lyra said weakly, before everything went wrong. Jake watched Chen's face as she processed this information. He could see her weighing duty against common sense, protocol against the possibility of preventing a massacre. Commander, one of her officers said quietly, we should contact headquarters. No, Chen said suddenly. If word of this leaks to the wrong people, it could start a panic. Or worse, someone might try to stop us from acting on it. She looked at Jake. You vouching for her? With my life, Jake said without hesitation. That might be exactly what you're doing, Chen warned. She turned to Lyra. If we help you deliver this information to your people, can you guarantee they'll work with us? Lyra straightened up, drawing on reserves of strength Jake didn't know she had. I can guarantee they'll listen. Whether they act, that depends on how convincing we are. Chen nodded slowly. Then we're going to make an unauthorized contact with a restricted species, probably ending my career in the process. Why? Jake asked. Chen looked at him with something that might have been a smile. Because you're right. This is bigger than protocols and regulations. And because, she paused, because I remember when you saved my ship during the Centauri incident. I owe you one. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Chen said. We still have to convince both governments to work together, stop an invasion, and probably avoid starting a war in the process. She turned to her security officers. Stand down. These two are now under my personal protection. Lyra's skin bloomed with golden light for the first time in days. You believe me? I believe that doing nothing would be worse than taking this risk, Chen said. But we're going to need a plan, and we're going to need to move fast. Jake looked at Lyra, who was already looking stronger just knowing they had an ally. What do you need from us? First, we get your friend some food and medical attention, Chen said. Then we figure out how to contact the Lyrian government without starting an interstellar incident. And if they won't listen? Jake asked. Chen's expression hardened. Then we prepare for war, because one way or another humanity isn't going down without a fight. As they prepared to transfer to the command ship, Lyra caught Jake's arm. Thank you, she said softly. For everything. We're not done yet, Jake replied. Still got work to do. Lyra smiled, her skin glowing with warm golden light. Together? Together, Jake confirmed. Whatever happened next, they would face it as partners. 3 weeks later, Jake stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Horizon, watching 2 fleets position themselves in space. On one side, the sleek silver ships of the Lyrian Navy, on the other, the darker, more angular vessels of Colonial Command. Between them, nothing but empty space and a lot of tension. Both sides are ready, Commander Chen reported. The joint defense grid is in position. Jake looked over at Lyra, who was connected to the ship's communication system through a special interface they'd built for her. Her skin was glowing bright blue with concentration as she coordinated between the 2 fleets. Invasion fleet detected, she announced. Right on schedule. 47 ships, just as the intelligence predicted. The next few hours were the longest of Jake's life. He watched on the tactical display as the combined human and Lyrian forces executed the plan they'd spent weeks perfecting. It wasn't easy. The 2 species had very different fighting styles and technologies, but somehow it worked. When the last enemy ship surrendered, Jake felt like he could finally breathe again. We did it, he said to Lyra. Her skin was cycling, through every color he'd ever seen, and a few new ones. We actually did it. The victory celebration lasted 3 days. Jake found himself shaking hands with admirals and diplomats, being called a hero by people who'd wanted to arrest him just weeks before. But the best moment came when the Lyrian Council officially pardoned Lyra for her contamination by alien. Contact, you are no longer exiled, the council representative told her through the translator. You may return home with honor. Jake was happy for her. He really was. But when she looked at him with those large, expressive eyes, he felt something. Cold settle in his stomach. So, he said later, when they were alone in the ship's observation deck, I guess this is goodbye. Lyra was quiet for a long time, watching the stars through the viewport. I suppose it is. Your people will probably give you a medal or something. Maybe a better job than messenger. Probably, she agreed. But she didn't sound excited about it. Jake cleared his throat. I've been offered a position too. Liaison officer with the new Interspecies Cooperation Council. Apparently, having experience with first contact makes me valuable. That's wonderful, Lyra said, and she meant it. You'll be good at it. Yeah. Well, it beats hauling cargo. Jake tried to sound casual. Course, it means a lot of traveling. Different worlds, different species. Probably get lonely. Lyra's skin shifted to a soft gold color. Lonely is difficult. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, Jake worked up the courage to ask the question that had been eating at him. What do you want, Lyra? Not what your people expect, not what duty demands. What do you actually want? She looked at him with surprise, as if no one had ever asked her that before. I want, she started, then stopped. I want to keep learning about humans, about other species. I want to build bridges between worlds that have never spoken to each other. Sounds like you want to be a liaison officer too, Jake said quietly. But I'm Lyrian. My place is with my people. Says who? Jake asked. You spent months thinking. You were cursed because you survived when others didn't. Turns out, you surviving was the only thing that prevented a war. Maybe your place isn't where people expect it to be. Lyra stared at him. Are you suggesting I should stay in human space? I'm suggesting you should go where you can do the most good. And from what I've seen, that's not sitting in some Lyrian government office filing reports. She was quiet for so long that Jake started to worry he'd said the wrong thing. Then very softly she said, "I would be honored to work with you, Jake." "Williams!" Jake felt like his heart might burst. "Partners?" "Partners," she agreed, her skin glowing with warm golden light. The formal ceremony took place a week later on Station Unity, the new headquarters for the Interspecies Cooperation Council. Jake stood at attention in his new uniform as Admiral. Peterson pinned the liaison officer insignia to his chest. "Congratulations, Lieutenant Commander Williams," the Admiral said. "Try not to start any more diplomatic incidents." "No promises, sir," Jake replied with a grin. Next to him, Lyra received her own credentials. She wore a modified version of the human uniform, designed to accommodate her unique physiology. Her skin glowed with pride as the Lyrian ambassador spoke in her native language, officially appointing her as a cultural liaison. After the ceremony, they walked together to their new ship, a specially designed vessel meant for diplomatic missions. It was smaller than a military cruiser, but bigger than Jake's old cargo hauler, with quarters for both human and alien crew members. "The Bridge Builder," Jake read from the nameplate. "Bit on the nose, don't you think?" "I like it," Lyra said. "It's honest about what we're trying to do." They stood on the bridge together, looking out at the bustling space station around them. Ships of a dozen different species came and went, carrying diplomats and traders and explorers. It was exactly the kind of future Jake had never dared to dream of. "So," he said to Lyra, "what's our first mission?" She consulted the assignment pad. "The Arcturus system. First contact with a species called the Zephyrians. Apparently they communicate through color changes." Jake looked at her skin, which was currently a happy golden shade. "Good thing we have an expert in that. Good thing we have someone who doesn't abandon people when things get complicated," Lyra replied. As they prepared for departure, Jake realized how much had changed since that rainy day in the warehouse. He'd gone from a lonely cargo hauler to someone with purpose, with a partner, with a future that stretched out among the stars. "Jake," Lyra said as they settled into their command chairs, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found me?" "Sometimes," Jake admitted. "But then I remember something my grandfather used to say." "What's that?" "The best decisions aren't the ones that make sense at the time. They're the ones that make sense when you look back on them later." Lyra's skin bloomed with colors Jake had never seen before, beautiful patterns that seemed to dance in the light. "I like your grandfather's wisdom." "Yeah," Jake said as their ship undocked from the station. "Me too." The bridge builder turned toward open space, carrying them toward their first official mission together. Behind them, the station grew smaller until it was just another point of light among the stars. Ahead lay unknown worlds, new species to meet, and challenges they couldn't even imagine yet. But they would face all of it together, the lonely cargo hauler and the abandoned alien who had found in each other something neither had expected to find: home.